In this video, I want to share some ideas for how we could use Apache Kafka as a data source in Grafana, and how we could use that to make Grafana visualizations of the streams of events that we have on Kafka topics. To show you the kinds of things I have in mind, I've set up a Kafka cluster running in a Docker Compose environment on my laptop, and I've got a couple of topics set up that I'm going to use to start creating some Grafana dashboards. I'll show you the first topic, before I get started. So the topic's called sensor readings, and it's getting a new event every few seconds. And each event has got the ID of a sensor and a couple of values for it, a temperature reading and a humidity reading. So this obviously gives me some numerical data that time series data that I can start making visualizations with. So if I stop that and switch back to Grafana, let's get started. So I'll start by going into data sources. So I'm going to add this local Kafka cluster as a new data source. So here's my plugin. I'll call this Docker Compose Kafka. Actually, let's give it capital letters because it's running. I've got Grafana running in Docker Compose as well. So I'll use the local network name. Those are fine. There's no auth needed. So that's everything I need, right? So let's jump into making a dashboard. Before I get into fancy visualizations, I'm going to start by just getting that stream of events, so these events from the sensor readings topic, into a table in the dashboard. So I'm going to do add visualization. I'm going to choose this data source. I need to identify the topic name, so that was sensor readings. And like I say, I'm going to start with a table just so we can see the raw data. I don't need to do too much with this. I'll give it a better name than that. I'll call it recent sensor readings. And it helps to have pagination enabled. But otherwise, I think that's good enough. So if I drag this out here, you can see, actually, let's make it a bit taller. You can see the new events arriving on this topic. So that's a first start. But like I said, what I'm interested in doing is visualizations. So the next thing I'm going to do is to use a gauge to show the most recent reading for any particular sensor. Because like I said, each event on the Kafka topic has got a particular sensor ID. So to start off with, I want to let the user of this dashboard pick which sensor they want to see data for. So if I go into settings, I'm going to set up a variable where you can control that sensor ID. So I'm going to do a custom variable and I'll call it sensor ID. And then that's good enough. Back to the dashboard. So here they're going to be able to control it. For this, actually, let me put a first value in here. So I'm getting quite a few sensor readings for this one, B220. So let's start with that, B220. Okay, so like I say, for this first visualization, I'm going to go with a gauge showing the most recent reading for a particular sensor. To avoid having to start a new Kafka consumer for every visualization on the dashboard, I'm going to try and reuse as much as possible this same. So now by picking that, you can see each new event is immediately being updated. So this is a good start. This is going to show the latest reading for any sensor. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a transformation, filter it by value, and just keep where the sensor ID is equal to that variable. So now I'm just going to get the latest value for this particular sensor. Still a bit too much noise. I don't really need the partition and offset. That's not super interesting. So if I add another transformation, filter by name, and then I can untick the values I'm not interested in. Yeah, so I'll keep humidity and temperature. So that's looking pretty close. I can do a few more things with this. If I start adding some overrides, so I'll start with this humidity one. So I'll pick the humidity sensor. I can set the min and max so that the scale is set a bit more interesting. So I'm not expecting any humidities below something like 40%. And I probably won't see any humidities above something like 70. So by setting that, the scale here will go from 40 to 70. So it's going to give me a better bar representation. I can set the unit. I know that this is going to be percent, so I can pick that. I can set a threshold for when it changes color to show what I think a high humidity is. So if I go to thresholds, so it will normally be green, and I'll say anything over 55 maybe. Anything over 55 gets me in the red. Actually, maybe a bit higher. I'll say something like 58. There we go. And now I can do the same to temperature. So if I had another field override by name, temperature, and do the same kind of thing. So I can set the min. So the minimum for this, I'd say something like 18. Set the max to be something like, say, 40. Set the threshold. So anything over 24 gets me into the red, maybe a bit. Oh yeah, 24 will do. Oh, and set the unit to be Celsius, degrees Celsius. So there we go. Oh, and I can give it a more meaningful title where it says panel title. So let me call that current readings. If I include the sensor ID in here, makes it clear it's for one particular sensor. So there we go. I've now got a live visualization with a gauge with dynamic coloring that will show me the latest reading for the particular sensor. And if I change the sensor ID, I'll get the reading for that sensor. So that's the kind of thing we can do. Oops, 20, right. Let's add another one. Maybe something that shows that latest reading in the context of the events that have come before it. So like a time series visualization. So I'll do add visualization. Again, I'm going to reuse the same data source for all of these visualizations. So I'll pick that. This time I'm going to leave it on time series and plot it over time. I haven't been running this Kafka cluster long enough to have 6 hours worth of data. So let me get that down to say 15 minutes. So I need to do a few transformations to tidy this up like before. So again, I just want to show this particular sensor that the user has picked. So I'm going to do a filter by value and add a condition where the sensor ID is equal to this variable. Like before, I don't need things like partition and offset. That's not very meaningful. So I will add another transformation. Filter by name and then untick. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just have a graph with a single value in, just the humidity. What else? I can do improve the styling. So I can do things like let's make the line a bit thicker, something like a 2, maybe smooth it a bit. I could add the unit, so I know this is a percent. That legend isn't very meaningful because I've only got one line here. So I can untick that and give it a better name. So I'll call this humidity. And again, I'll include the sensor ID in the title. There we go. So that's the kind of thing that I had in mind. And I can do the same for temperature. So if I just do duplicate, drag that over here, and then I'll edit that to show temperature. So I'll go into the transformations and pick temperature. I just need to change the unit from percent to degrees. There we go. So now I've got the latest readings showing on this gauge, and then the last 15 minutes worth of readings shown on these graphs for humidity and temperature. So this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about, this ability to show a live visualization of the events landing on a Kafka topic in a Grafana dashboard. So that's probably enough for this sensor readings topic. So let me just save this. And then let's start on a different topic. So as I said, I've got a few topics set up. So let me switch to my second one. So for this second one, the topic is called orders.new. And this topic gets a new event every few seconds with an order that someone has placed. So it's got the name of the customer who's bought something, what it is they bought, how much it cost, the region where the order was placed. And this gives me a variety of types of data. So it's not just numerical data. The fact I've got strings, the region is kind of like a categorical value, an enum. So this will let me create some different types of visualization. So if I stop that and switch back to Grafana, if I go back to my data source, I can reuse the same data source that I used for my last dashboard. Like before, the first thing I'm going to do is bring in the raw data in a table, just so I can sort of see that the order events are visible, viewable in a Grafana dashboard. So I'll use this data source and set the topic name to orders.new. So as I say, I want to have this as a table. So here you can see the raw data. Like before, I don't need to do much with this. I will give it a better name, recent orders, and enable pagination. If I drag this out, so you can see the new orders. Actually, let me jump to the end. You can see the new orders arriving with the customer name, what they ordered, how much they spent, and so on. But let's start making some visualizations with this data. To start with, I'm going to use this region field. So this is, like I was saying before, categorical data. There's a small number of regions. So maybe I want to see the distribution of how many orders are being placed in each region. So if I add a new visualization, as with the last dashboard, I'm going to try and reuse the same data source as much as possible to reduce the number of consumers, Kafka consumers that I create. So this is going to be a bar chart. So I'm going to start doing some transformations to tidy this up a bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is keep just the properties that I want. So if I do filter by name, I just want the region field. So I'm going to untick all of the others. Obviously the region is a string, so I haven't got any numerical data anymore, but I will do in a moment, because the next thing I'm going to do is count them with a group by. I will do a count of the orders, grouping by the region. So now I can see the number of orders in each region. That label isn't, so it's named the count, event time count, which isn't great. So let me improve that a bit. So I'll rename that, organize by name, and I'll call this number of orders. So now, yeah, that's better. So now I can see 8 orders placed in APAC, 11 in South America, 9 in EMEA, and 1 in North America. And that's updating live every time a new order comes in. Actually, I don't really like those numbers at the top of the bars. Let me get rid of that. So I'll do show values never. And I can give this a more meaningful title. So I'll call this orders by region. So I think that is pretty much what I'll do is, I think it would help to have I prefer to have these bars in alphabetical order. So let me sort that. So I'll do a sort by, and the reason I'm doing this is because I want the order to stay consistent even as new events come in. So I'll sort by region. That legend isn't particularly meaningful, so I'll untick that. Legend visibility, which is there. Okay. So I think that's good enough to get me started. So now I've got this live visualization as new orders are placed. I can see how many orders are being placed in each region. What's next? Maybe let's look at the price next. So maybe I want to see how many orders are being placed for low priced items as opposed to the number of orders that are placed for more expensive items, to see the distribution of prices in this stream of events. So I can do add visualization. Like before, I'm going to keep reusing the same data source. And I only need the price this time. So I'll do a filter by name and untick everything except the price. Let me just, because I don't have a huge amount of data on this topic, so if I do last 15 minutes, there we go, that's better. So this is just showing me a time series visualization of each order as they come in, plotting the price. So what I want instead is a histogram. This is showing me that there were 4 orders between $28 and $29, 2 orders between $29 and $30. That's not bad. It's a bit too granular, a bit more granular than I was hoping. So let me try reducing the bucket count, maybe to 4. Maybe it's a bit too small. Try 5. Yeah, let's go with 4. So this is more like it. So I can see I had 12 orders between $20 and $30. The legend isn't very easy to read, so let's improve that. What I can do is, let's set the unit. That'll help, because that will show that this is the price in dollars. And let's say that this is the number of orders. So now I can see that there were 4 orders between $50 and $60, so that's easier to read. Again, legend, because I'm only showing one thing on each graph, the legend isn't telling me much, so I'll get rid of that. Let's add a better title. So I'll call this orders by price. I think that is probably good enough for that. So if I drag this up here, so I can now see the number of orders, the distribution of orders by the region where they're placed, that string data, that categorical data, but also the distribution of orders based on the value of the item being ordered as a histogram. So I can see that most of the orders are for items between $30 and $40. What else can we show? Let's try a visualization that shows how frequently orders are being placed, or how many orders are being placed in each time period. So again, let's use the same orders data source. For this, actually, the contents of the orders isn't going to be super important, because I'm just going to be counting them based on the time period. So I can get rid of a lot of the noise. I'll keep the times and the order ID, so I've got something to count, but I'll get rid of everything else. So let's do the count so I get some numerical data back. So I'll do, actually, I need something to, what I'll do is, if I get rid of that, if I switch to table view, to let me group it in 1 minute buckets, I'm going to take this time string and just keep everything up to the minute field. So I'll get rid of the seconds and the milliseconds accuracy. So to do that, I'm going to do convert field, and I'll take that order time and turn it from a string to a time, and I'll do 2 dates, hours, and minutes. So now, because I'm only keeping the minutes, or up to the minute level of precision, all of these orders will have the same time. So that means I can now group it by that time value. So if I do that, add another transformation, do a group by, I can group by this field, and it just means I now need to count the number of order IDs there were. Oops, I missed. Count. So now I can see that in this minute there were 6 orders, in this minute there were 21 orders, and so on. So if I go back out of table view, I don't think a line graph is the best for this. I think a bar chart might be a better fit. Yeah, that's more like I had in mind. Let me switch that to last 30 minutes. Again, I don't really like the numbers at the top, so let me get rid of that. You probably wouldn't want to do all the way back to the beginning of time for this, so limiting might be helpful. So what I'll do is I'll add a limit, and 10 minutes worth maybe. Let me start with something really small, so 5. Oh, hang on, that's got me the first 5 minutes worth of orders. So what I'll do is I'll sort it. If I sort by the order time in reverse, I need to do that first. then limit it to 5, and then I'll sort it back so it's in the right order. It's a little bit hacky, but I think this will do the job. There we go. So this will get me the last 5 minutes worth, and I can play with that number, maybe 6 would be better. I'll go with 8 just for that. Let me give this a better title. Number of orders per minute, and I'll get rid of that legend again. There we go. So this is gonna, you see that as the, oh, actually, let me rename that so it's not just ID count. Organize fields by name, and I'll call that number of orders. So now I can see that, in this minute there were 23 orders, in this one there was 19. This is the current minute, so this is still ticking up as each order is placed. And as we roll over onto the next minute, we'll start a new bar for that. I'm not totally sure a bar chart is best for this, but I'd play around with this. But you get the idea. We can see the frequency of events on a topic in a live visualization. Let me drag that down and keep these two next to each other. Not all visualizations have to be graphs, so we can maintain running statistical summaries. So let's try that. Again, stick with the same data source. So I'll do a table this time. And like before, I will get rid of the noise from this. So if I just do filter by name, I'll get rid of the partition, the offset. I'll just keep the numerical values, the price and the quantity, because those are the ones I can do statistical analysis on. So what I'll do is I'll add a transformation and do a reduce. Where's reduce? And I can do min and max. So this will show me actually let me switch that around so they're in a more logical order, min followed by max. So I can see the lowest price order that I've had and the largest priced order, the smallest quantity, the largest quantity. I could add things like the average, the mean, so I can see the average order spent is 37, which kind of makes sense from the histogram we showed before of the distribution. You could see the standard deviation and so on. I probably don't need to keep adding more. You get the rough idea. So let me just add a title to this, order summaries. So let me drag that down next to the orders per minute. Oops. So now this is going to be this is taking a bit more space. Let me make this narrower so that fits there. So now I'm going to have this sort of live updating analysis of the order events that are coming in. So that's probably enough for this topic. So let me save this dashboard. Orders. For my next dashboard, I want to show connecting to a remote Kafka cluster that has authentication, that has security enabled, to show that that sort of thing is still doable as well. So I'm going to create another data source. So this time, instead of my local laptop Kafka cluster, I'm going to use a remote one that I have. Give this, oops, I didn't mean to hit enter, so it's tried to connect to it. I haven't got one running on localhost, so that's why that didn't work. If I paste in, this is my bootstrap address. The defaults for this are fine. So this one needs a Scram username and password. My username is this, and my password is that. I do need to enable SSL, so let's give that a try. Okay, so that's connected. So now I can jump into creating my third dashboard. Like before, I will start with a tabular view. So I'm going to pick this new authenticated Kafka. And my topic here is called bike sharing.location. And this topic gets JSON payloads events with the location of bikes in a bike sharing scheme running in London. So you can see here the kinds of events that we get. If I just add a title, recent bike location updates, and I'll add pagination. So it's things. So I get a short code for the bike ID, what journey it's currently on because it's been checked out by someone, and its current location. And the only information we have about the user who's checked it out is whether or not they've registered before or not. The reason why I wanted to use this stream of events is because it has location, latitude and longitude, because that lets me show another type of visualization of plotting Kafka topics on a map. So I'll do add visualization. I'll reuse the same data source for this table. And this time I'm going to use a geomap, which is that one. So I need to do a bit of transformation to get this ready. I'll get rid of the fields I don't need. So I just want, I'll keep the bike ID so I know which bike is where. And I'll keep the latitude and longitude. I think that's enough. So here, I just need to tell it, actually what I'll do is, I'll just, to avoid flooding the map, I'll just keep the most recent location for each bike so I can show the current location, or at least the most recent location for every bike. So I'll do a group by the bike ID, and then I want the most recent latitude, and the most recent longitude. I think, actually, I don't really need the event time either, so I'll untick that. Okay, that gives me everything I need. So if I go to the map settings, I'll change location mode to coordinates, and I just need to tell it that that is the latitude and that is the longitude. So now I can see the points start to show up. Let me, if I need to zoom in, where are the zoom controls? Somewhere in this list. There we go. If I do fit to data, that's not bad. Maybe zoom in a little more. Oops. Actually, if I do it by dragging, that's, I could fiddle with this for ages, but that's probably good enough. Instead of having dots, let's label the points with which bike it is. So if I find text label, where is that? Here we go. So I'll make that the bike ID. Let's get rid of the legend because that's not showing me anything. Set the title. I'll call this current bike locations. Let's have a look at that. It's a bit too small. Let's make it bigger. So now, as each new event comes in, it's going to plot, and you can sort of see, you have to watch it for a little while, but you can see individual bikes moving. So like J9 just moved, that one just moved. So it's almost hypnotic to watch this, but you can see the Kafka events on the topic being represented as moving points on a map. If I had more time, I'd maybe adjust the colors so the different bike IDs were a bit more visually distinct, so you could actually spot them when they're moving. Or maybe show not just the most recent location, the current location, but like the last few, so you could see where they've been. But you get the rough idea. That's probably enough for that. Let me save this dashboard. Bike locations. I'll do one last dashboard to show that we can visualize metadata about the events as well. So for this, I'm going to use that remote Kafka cluster again. So if I go to data sources and pick this one, and I'll build a new dashboard. And for this one, I've got a topic called product returns. So what I want to do, if I just switch to a table view for this, Um, for this one, I'm less interested in the contents of the event. And if you know about Kafka, you'll know that events, actually, sorry, just quickly turn on pagination for this so I can flip through. If you know about Kafka, you'll know that events can be produced to multiple partitions on a topic. So one of the things I might want to visualize is the distribution of events onto the different partitions in the topic so that I can make sure that I'm getting an even distribution of these events so that they can be processed evenly by the different consumers. So it's kind of a very ops level concern to make sure that the data is being keyed in a good way. So visualization could help give me a live perspective on that. So what I'll do is I'll add a new visualization. I'll reuse this data source, start adding some transformations. So I just want to keep, like I say, for this one, I'm not interested in actually the contents of the events, just the, actually I'll keep the ID. So I've got something to count in a minute. And let me change this to be 30 minutes, maybe slightly longer. So what I'll do is I want to count the number of events for each partition. So I'll do a group by count the number of events, grouping by the partition. And for this, I mean, I haven't used pie chart yet, so I'll switch to this. I need to rejig, reshape the data a bit for this. What I'm going to do is, actually, I'll start by renaming it to give these fields a more meaningful name. So where's rename? That's under organize. So I'll call this partition, or actually let's call it topic partition, and I'll call this number of events. And like I say, I need to restructure this data so that it fits into the pie chart better. So I can do that with rows to fields, and I'll use this as the field name, and I'll use that as the field value. So now I can see that this many events on partition 0, this many events on partition 1, this many events in partition 2. So if I call this distribution of events by topic partition, not the snappiest title I've ever given a chart, but that'll do. So that immediately shows me that maybe it is worth reviewing this. It's not, over half of the events are all landing on partition 1, so maybe the distribution of my keys isn't great. So that could be another interesting kind of dashboard to have. So I'll call this product returns. So that's probably enough. Across these dashboards, what I've tried to show is a range of ways that I think Grafana could be useful as a way of giving us insight into what we have, the events that we have on our Kafka topics, and how by using Kafka as a data source in Grafana, it allows us to play with the data on our Kafka topics in a new interactive, data-driven way. Thanks very much for your time. Hope you found this useful or interesting. Please feel free to reach out if you've got any questions or ideas for what else we could do.